Hi, today we're going to demo the infrastructure editor part of the MetalSoft platform. To set the stage, I think we all know that the public cloud has transformed the way that users expect to build, interact with, and consume IT resources. Well, MetalSoft enables that same cloud-like experience, but with your own hardware. In other words, MetalSoft allows your infrastructure to be made available in a cloud operating model. And when we say cloud operating model, we mean that it enables self-service capabilities for the end users of your infrastructure, which includes servers, storage systems, and networking components residing in data centers or edge locations. So MetalSoft has two different user interfaces. One is for administrators, through which they can carry out the day-to-day lifecycle management of the infrastructure. And the second interface is for the end users. And here, end user means those that want to consume the infrastructure that has been deployed at their data center, edge locations, or in third-party colocation. This demo will be focused on the end user side. And these end users might be site reliability engineers, DevOps engineers, platform engineers, or software engineers that are building internal or external facing applications. You might be wondering, who is this really for? There are two types of customer segments that MetalSoft caters to. One segment is service providers, and we include both cloud service providers as well as telecom service providers in that segment. So if we're talking about a CSP, the end user would be the customer who wants to consume that infrastructure. The second customer segment that we serve is large enterprise. In these cases, the enterprise could be a big financial institution, a retail organization with many locations, or perhaps a healthcare or utilities provider. In that case, the end user will be the employees of that organization that want to consume the infrastructure for the deployment of applications. So we'll be flipping back and forth between these personas during the demo so that you get to know what use cases are supported for each end user type. So here we have the point of entry for any end user. We have a built-in authentication and authorization mechanism where the users are authenticated and authorized to use this platform via MetalSoft's built-in capability. We also support LDAP-based integration with Active Directory and single sign-on so that you can use the same company credentials that you use for other applications. We also support SAML-based authentication, integrating with your choice of IAM provider. So all three mechanisms are available, and at the time of login, the end user will be presented with this GUI where they will enter their credentials. If it's a first-time login, then they would be asked to set up a new password, and we do strongly recommend that you enable two-factor authentication once you sign into the user portal. So once you're logged in for the first time, you'll be presented with a view of what we call the infrastructure editor, and it starts out as a blank canvas. So one of the key concepts that MetalSoft proposes is for infrastructure to be intent-based. This concept has been around for a while and is especially prevalent in networking. And as we see in RFC 9315, the way it defines intent is basically a set of operational goals or outcomes defined in a declarative manner without specifying how to achieve or implement them. And then what MetalSoft does is extend this definition of intent-based networking to intent-based infrastructure. So again, we don't restrict this to the networking part. We extend it to the compute and storage part of it, all from the perspective of the consumer of those resources, irrespective of how the underlying infrastructure has been configured. That complexity of infrastructure configuration has been abstracted away for the end user so that they can focus on their application without worrying about the hardware configs. So again, once the user logs into the portal, this is the first screen that they see, the infrastructure editor. And all the data center environments which their organization has made the infrastructure available in are listed at the top in this dropdown. And remember, when we say infrastructure, we're talking about the three core components: compute, network, and storage. So the end user decides in which environment they want to deploy the application, and they begin with deploying a server. So you click on the server icon in the left-hand nav, and once you click server, you're presented with a pop-up menu where you have several choices to make. The first option is the type of server. So these are the types of servers that are available in that particular data center. Prior to this, during the resource discovery phase, what MetalSoft does is identify the type of infrastructure or the resources that each particular server has, which includes identifying the type of CPUs, the RAM, number of disks, the type of card, the ports, and so on. So all those hardware capabilities have been detected during the discovery phase, and the platform registers those servers, switches, and storage systems into your inventory database, and that's the source for this list. So if you have multiple data centers with different OEM vendors or different configurations, all those servers would be listed here in the dropdown, where the end user can choose the server config which is suitable for their application. So the first option is to select the type of server. Then the second option is to choose the number of servers that you want to deploy. Obviously, this is still dependent on the number of servers that are currently available in that particular location. Then the third option is where to deploy the operating system. Here we have three options. Don't install an OS, install on the local disk of the server itself, or if the server has an iSCSI drive connected, then you can deploy on the iSCSI drive as well. This time we'll select Install OS on the local drive. And the fourth option is to choose which operating system you want to deploy. In this dropdown, you can choose from the operating systems which have been made available to you by the administrators of your infrastructure. Here, the admin can list all the hardened images which have been certified to be deployed in that particular environment on that server type. Suppose you want to deploy Ubuntu for this particular application. So you pick the Ubuntu template and click Create. So as I mentioned, MetalSoft is intent-based, and at this stage, we've defined the intent to have a server with 16 gigabytes of RAM and this Ubuntu operating system deployed on top. And the way MetalSoft visualizes that intent is through this logical representation of the infrastructure when the customer clicks deploy. And that's where MetalSoft translates the intent into the respective configuration on the physical servers and the network elements and the storage systems, if the end user has defined any of those as part of their intent. So at this stage, hopefully you're starting to see the self-service consumption of the infrastructure. All of this happens without having to raise a ticket for infrastructure teams and without having to coordinate between teams in your organization. Next, let's add to what we've done so far. Suppose you want to attach storage to this particular server. All you do is click on the block storage icon and drag the block storage over to attach it to that particular server, which you have provisioned in the previous stage. As part of that, you create a drive, then create a LUN for that volume, and we attach it to the server. Again, with these self-serve capabilities, you can define the number and the type of storage that you want to deploy. So we can choose to deploy 100 gigs or 400 gigs or whichever size volume to be attached to that particular server. And then we can select if it's an SSD or another type of drive. You also have the option to deploy an operating system on that particular drive. So if you go select CentOS 7.7 for that drive and then hit save. So that will attach the drive to that server and create the respective storage area network. And for that specific drive, it can communicate over iSCSI to the attached server. Okay, for the external drive to be attached to it, that's called an instance array. And in case you're not familiar, the instance array concept is just a logical grouping of similarly configured servers. So what that allows is, let's say tomorrow this workload has increased and now you want, say, 4 servers for it. So you go here and change the count to 4 and click Save. Then the MetalSoft platform will identify the available servers with similar configurations in that data center, irrespective of whether they are in the same rack or across the aisle. And it will provision the additional 3 servers with the same configuration that was initially defined as an intent during the original instance creation, which is essentially the type of operating system and the network configuration that was outlined prior. But that instance array definition allows us to provision as many infrastructures as you want. And also, if tomorrow the workload shrinks, you can go back in and reduce the server count and MetalSoft will decommission, let's say, 2 servers from this instance array and make those available to other end users that have access to this resource pool. And suppose your needs change overnight. Maybe you deployed these initially for a web application, and tomorrow you want to deploy an application for your backup database. All you do is click on the server button and drag the server into this canvas and choose the server type which will fulfill their database need. So you create a server with a large amount of storage attached to it, and then you follow the same steps of defining where and which operating system do you want on those servers. And it is created, and then the MetalSoft platform will execute the same steps to bring that server online. And now perhaps you want to configure your web application server and the database server into a single LAN. In that case, you can simply click on one of the web application server's ports and drag a line to a port on the database server, and that's it. So at this point, you define the intent to create a LAN between 2 of your servers, and that's where MetalSoft platform captures that intent. There's still a port of the server that needs to be a VLAN, and similarly, I need to configure a VLAN on the switch where these 2 servers have been configured. And so we go and configure not only the servers as well as the respective switchboard to be deployed on that particular VLAN. So as you see, you still haven't had to raise a ticket to your networking team or storage team. Having said that, we provide plenty of guardrail options for administrators to set policies and limits for the end users. For example, the security policies, the VLAN ranges, the type of subnet CIDR that the end user is allowed to provision, and so on. All of those can be defined by the administrator, but the whole idea is that we want to empower the end user so that they can self-serve their use cases without having to know and fully comprehend all about the underlying infrastructure. So this solves the most common use case, which is the low-level, intent-driven deployment of infrastructure. And next, we've seen more and more adoption of Kubernetes over the past few years, and many applications are getting containerized. In that case, where you want to deploy a Kubernetes cluster, you simply click on this Kubernetes icon here, and again, you'll see the straightforward nature of how you can deploy. And again, when we say cluster, you get to choose how many master nodes you want and how many worker nodes you want. Suppose you want 3 master nodes and 10 worker nodes in your Kubernetes cluster. So you define the 10 worker nodes and 3 master nodes, and the MetalSoft platform will pick the servers from the selected data center environment. It will choose 3 of those servers with this specification to deploy the 3 master nodes, and then choose the remaining 10 servers with these specifications to deploy the worker nodes onto it. So you deploy the Kubernetes control plane on the master nodes with kubelet and kubeproxy on the worker nodes. And then we ensure that those worker nodes join the Kubernetes cluster once they come online. And then once the cluster has been deployed, MetalSoft provides an endpoint URL where you can access the cluster, or you can also fetch the kubectl config file and start using the cluster from there. So there you have it. To wrap up, the MetalSoft platform is an intent-based infrastructure platform enabling cloud-like experience for new or existing infrastructure deployments, regardless of the physical location of your hardware, whether it's in a core data center, third-party colo, or spread across many small edge locations. So there's a lot more that we'd love to show you. As you can see, we haven't even touched on VMware. Go to metalsoft.io today and contact us for a personalized demo. Thank you.